Sam Cooke pulled up to the Holiday Inn in Shreveport, Louisiana, with his band and his wife. He walked to the front desk and asked for a room. The clerk looked at him and said the hotel was full. It was not full. Sam Cooke knew it was not full, and the song he wrote because of that night became one of the most important recordings in American history. Why did Sam Cooke, a man who had knocked Elvis off the #1 spot, who had his own record label, who had negotiated contracts that no black artist had negotiated before, still get turned away from a hotel in 1963? And what did that moment tell him about the distance between fame and freedom? If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to Soul Legends Untold. Let us know in the comments which legend story you'd like to hear next.
By October of 1963, Sam Cooke had more evidence of his own success than most people accumulate in a lifetime. He had knocked Elvis Presley off the #1 position on every chart in America with You Send Me in 1957. He had followed it with a string of hits, Chain Gang, Twistin' the Night Away, Another Saturday Night, that demonstrated a range most artists spend entire careers trying to develop. He had signed with RCA Records in 1960 for $100,000, one of the largest deals a black recording artist had ever received, and he had negotiated into that deal the right to retain control of his own song publishing, a provision that most labels did not offer and most artists did not think to ask for. He had built his own record label, SAR Records, and his own publishing company, CAGS Music Corporation. He had used both to sign and develop other artists, gospel singers, R&B acts, young performers who needed the infrastructure that the industry rarely provided to black musicians without extracting something large in return. He was, in 1963, not simply a successful singer. He was an architect, a man who had looked at the structure of the music industry and decided to rebuild the parts of it that had been designed to limit him. He was 32 years old. He drove a Maserati. He had a beautiful wife named Barbara and a daughter named Linda. He had performed at the Copacabana in New York, the most prestigious nightclub in America, to reviews that compared him favorably to the greatest performers of any era. He was, by every external measure available in 1963, a man who had made it. And 1963 was also the year the country made very clear, again and again, that making it did not mean what Sam Cooke had spent his life assuming it would mean. The year had been relentless. In April, Bill Connor's fire hoses turned on peaceful demonstrators in Birmingham, Alabama, images that went around the world and made the gap between American rhetoric and American reality impossible to ignore. In June, Medgar Evers was shot in his driveway in Jackson, Mississippi. In August, 250,000 people marched on Washington and heard Martin Luther King Jr. describe a dream that the country had not yet decided to make real. In September, 4 little girls were killed in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. Sam Cooke watched all of it. He'd been watching for years, and in the fall of 1963, he was about to watch it happen to him.
Before arriving in Shreveport, Sam Cooke had done what any traveler with resources and foresight would do. He had called ahead. He had made a reservation at the Holiday Inn North on Market Street, a respectable hotel, the kind of place a successful touring artist would expect to stay when performing at a city's main concert venue. He had given his name. He had confirmed the booking. The reservation existed. On October 8, 1963, Sam Cooke arrived at the Holiday Inn with his wife Barbara, his brother Charles, and other members of his touring party. He walked to the front desk. The clerk looked at him, and then the clerk told him the hotel was full. No vacancies, nothing available. Sorry. The reservation had been made in good faith. Sam Cooke had done everything right, called ahead, confirmed, arrived with the documentation of his booking implicit in the simple fact that he had a name and a date and a room number that the hotel's own system contained. The clerk's response, the glance, the hesitation, the claim of no vacancies, was not confusion or oversight. It was a decision, a calculation made in the seconds between seeing Sam Cooke walk through the door and opening his mouth to speak. The calculation was simple, and it was old, and it had nothing to do with room availability. Sam Cooke's wife Barbara understood the calculation immediately. She had grown up in the same country Sam had. She knew what the glance meant and what the hesitation meant and what would happen if the man standing beside her pushed too hard against the thing that had just been decided without words. She put her hand on his arm. She told him they should leave. She said, "They'll kill you."
Her fear was not hypothetical. It was the specific, informed fear of a black woman in the American South in 1963, where the distance between a confrontation at a hotel front desk and something much worse was not always as large as it should have been. Medgar Evers had been shot in his driveway 4 months earlier. The 16th Street Baptist Church had been bombed 3 weeks before. The country was not abstract about what it was willing to do. Sam Cooke knew the reservation existed. He had made it himself. He stood at the front desk of the Holiday Inn and demanded to see the manager. His wife Barbara put her hand on his arm and told him quietly that they should leave. She said, "They'll kill you." Sam Cooke looked at her and said, "They ain't gonna kill me because I'm Sam Cooke." His brother Charles protested alongside him. The manager was called. Words were exchanged that the hotel's official records do not preserve in detail. Eventually, because the alternative in the American South in 1963 for a black man who refused to accept the terms being offered was something much worse than being turned away from a hotel, Sam Cooke left. The group drove away from the Holiday Inn. As they went, they honked their horns. Whether this was deliberate protest or, as Sam's close friend David Washington would later say, the result of a malfunction with the Maserati, it did not matter to the Holiday Inn's management. A complaint was made to the police, and when Sam Cooke and his group arrived at the Castle Hotel, one of the few hotels in Shreveport where black travelers were permitted to stay, the police were waiting. Sam Cooke, Charles Cooke, Barbara Cooke, and Roy Crane were arrested and charged with disturbing the peace. They were held for 5 hours. They were released on a bond of $102.50 each. That evening, after the arrest, after the 5 hours in a police station, after everything the day had contained, Sam Cooke performed at the Municipal Auditorium in Shreveport as scheduled. There was also a bomb threat at the venue that night. He performed anyway. His daughter Carla would say years later simply, his music had crossed racial lines that he himself could not.
The Shreveport incident was not the first time Sam Cooke had encountered the specific logic of American racism. He had grown up in it. He had toured the South in his years with the Soul Stirrers, traveling the gospel circuit through the same states and the same towns, where the rules were the same in 1950 as they had been in 1930. Where the water fountains were marked and the hotel entrances were separate and the audiences were divided by color, and the only question was whether the system would be enforced quietly or loudly on any given night. He had understood, even as his pop career made him famous in ways his gospel career had not, that fame was not a passport, that the record sales and the television appearances and the COPA reviews and the RCA contract did not change the fundamental architecture of a country that had been built, piece by piece, to tell him where he belonged and where he did not. But something about Shreveport opened something in him that years of quiet understanding had not fully opened. Peter Guralnick, who wrote the definitive biography of Sam Cooke, told CNN affiliate KSLA that the incidents in Shreveport inspired Cooke to write one of the most important civil rights-era songs. He said, "It was such a terrible thing that happened, and the song was a direct outgrowth of it." What also broke something open in Sam Cooke that year was a concert he had attended in the summer of 1963, where he heard a young white folk singer from Minnesota named Bob Dylan perform a song called Blowin' in the Wind. The song asked questions about freedom and justice and the distance between American ideals and American reality, questions that Sam Cooke had been living his entire life. He was ashamed, he said so. Not ashamed of Dylan, ashamed of himself. He was the most successful black performer in America. He owned his masters. He had his own label. He had the platform and the audience and the credibility and the voice. And a 22-year-old white folk singer from Duluth had written the song that Sam Cooke should have written. He went home from that concert carrying two things: the image of Bob Dylan on that stage and the question of what it meant that he had not yet said what Dylan had just said. 6 months later, on an October night in Shreveport, the answer arrived.
The song came to Sam Cooke in what he described to close friends as an almost dreamlike state. He did not sit down and write it the way a craftsman sits down to work. It arrived. The melody first, slow, orchestral in his imagination, nothing like the up-tempo pop records that RCA had been releasing under his name. Then the words: a man born by the river, a man running ever since, a man tired of waiting for the thing that had been promised to him since birth and had never fully arrived. He took the song to René Hall, an arranger who worked with him at RCA. 2 days before a recording session scheduled for late January 1964 at RCA's Hollywood studio, Cooke handed Hall the song and asked him to write an orchestral arrangement. He gave Hall no specific guidance, no tempo instructions, no key preference, no description of what he was trying to achieve. He trusted Hall to hear what the song was about and respond accordingly. Hall, who had grown up in Morgan City, Louisiana, understood immediately. He took the assignment to heart in the way that only someone who had also lived inside the reality the song described could take it to heart. The session took place in late January 1964. Sam Cooke stood at the RCA microphone and recorded "A Change Is Gonna Come" with an arrangement that surrounded his voice in strings and French horns, the sound of something vast and patient and old, the sound of a river, the sound of time moving at a pace that individual lives could not alter but could, perhaps, bear witness to. The song was 4 minutes and 45 seconds long. It did not have a chorus in the commercial sense. It did not have a hook designed to embed itself in memory the way his pop singles did. It moved through its verses like a man walking, deliberately, without rushing, knowing where it was going, and not pretending to be something other than what it was. When the playback ended in the control room, nobody said anything for a moment. Sam Cooke was reportedly frightened by what he had made, not of the song itself, but of what releasing it might mean, what it would say about him to an industry and an audience that had received him as a pop star and might not be prepared for this. He had spent years building a career that operated across the color line, reaching white audiences in a way that very few black artists had managed. A song this explicitly about the black American experience, this unambiguous in what it was saying about the country, could cost him what he had built. He put the song aside. He did not immediately release it.
On February 7, 1964, Sam Cooke performed "A Change Is Gonna Come" on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He sang it once on national television and then did not perform it publicly again. He was still not certain what the song was or what releasing it fully would mean, or whether the moment had arrived for what the song was saying. He was navigating a question that black artists in America had always had to navigate. How much of the truth was the industry prepared to receive, and at what cost? He was still navigating it on December 11, 1964, when he died at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles under circumstances that have never been fully and satisfactorily explained. He was 33 years old. A Change Is Gonna Come was released as a single on December 22, 1964, 11 days after his death. It reached number 9 on the Billboard R&B chart and number 31 on the Hot 100. Those numbers do not begin to describe what the song became. It was played at civil rights marches and memorial services and in the living rooms of people who needed to hear that the thing they were waiting for was coming, even when the evidence was thin. It was sung by artists across every genre in the decades that followed. Barack Obama quoted it on the night he was elected President of the United States in 2008. In 2019, 56 years after the night Sam Cooke stood at the front desk of the Holiday Inn North in Shreveport and refused to accept a lie, the city's mayor issued a formal apology to Sam Cooke's daughter, Carla. She was presented with a key to the city. Mayor Adrian Perkins said, "We need to come to terms with our past so we can move forward in a positive way." Carla Cooke accepted the apology. She still sings her father's music in her own concerts. She said of that night in Shreveport, "His music had crossed racial lines that he himself could not. We were all one because we all were moved by the music." Sam Cooke had knocked Elvis Presley off the #1 position. He had owned his masters when no one else did. He had driven a Maserati and performed at the Copa and built a label from nothing. And in Shreveport, Louisiana, on October 8, 1963, a hotel clerk had looked at all of that and told him the hotel was full. The song he wrote in response outlived everything that tried to contain him. Because some truths are too large for any hotel clerk to turn away, and some changes, the ones worth waiting for, take exactly as long as they take. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Let us know in the comments. We'll see you in the next story.